Welcome. My name is Steve Eastman, licensed clinical social worker and owner of Family Transitions Counseling based in Pleasant Grove, Utah. Today, I wanted to bring to you the first of a series of classes that we will be putting on the website to address the challenges of life after divorce. We'll call the series Life After Divorce and then have several short classes that will address different aspects of divorce and hopefully will help those of you who are going through one or who have been through one and are still struggling and hurting to feel better and to have some tools and techniques to escape some of the pain that comes on the heels of divorce. I wanted to begin today with our class today on myths. I wanted to talk about them because there are many myths that occur that, whether it's in the LDS culture or other cultures around us here or anywhere across the globe, these are common myths that happen when people go through a divorce. And if you're just new to it, just going through the first stages of divorce, then you're going to be particularly vulnerable to some of these myths and might not be aware that it's a myth at all. In which case, then it can be particularly painful when you hear these things and you might believe them. So let's establish them so that you know what to watch out for. Myth number one. This one, I'm putting it up first because it really bothers me. In my practice, I see this coming in quite often. Cases where people are struggling within their marriage because of a partner who is making very poor choices. And those choices are impacting the marriage and what we would term the surviving spouse, if you will. And let me give you some examples of these. Things like having an affair, and then maybe even leaving the marriage as a result and marrying that partner, addictions, and maybe even abuse, all the way to situations where the partner just simply quits and leaves the marriage. The myth is that it takes two to divorce. I've heard that plenty, but I can tell you from these experiences and working with people whose spouses have cheated, whose spouses are fully addicted to alcohol or drugs or pornography or gambling or any of a number of other things that one can be addicted to, whose spouses are extremely abusive. How is it that we can possibly blame what we might term the victim within that marriage for the divorce that would have to come in order for that person to escape that kind of pain? I get it. There are cases where infidelity happens and that individual is trying to work on repenting and getting things back together again, and then the spouse can forgive and work through and then even save the marriage there. I'm referring to cases where the spouse is not repentant, has no desire to work on this, and just simply leaves. They cheat and then they leave. In that case, how can we blame the victim who was cheated on, the victim who was abused, the victim who was simply abandoned, or the victim who is not addicted but is suffering the ramifications of it financially and interpersonally and in so many painful ways? How do we say it takes two to divorce when those kinds of things are happening? It is a very hurtful myth to pass around. It does not take two people to divorce. It takes two people to make a marriage work. Two people who, for all intents and purposes, are weak. They make mistakes. They have all kinds of problems and challenges that they're trying to work on and improve. Yeah, and they'd probably be the first ones to tell you that they have these weaknesses. But everybody has weaknesses and flaws. So that's not the point. We are talking about choices that end marriage, that damage it so deeply that it cannot be salvaged. And those choices commonly come from just one party, one person who makes those choices. So it's unhelpful, unhealthy, and in fact very hurtful and damaging to run around saying that it always takes two to divorce. Now, to be clear, I do have some cases that have come in to my office for counseling where, it definitely takes two in some of those cases. Two people who are yelling and screaming at each other and are not working on the marriage. They're blaming each other. There's all kinds of selfishness and pride, and then they end up getting divorced, and it's both of their faults. Or if both parties are cheating or both parties are addicted. But I'm not referring to those. We cannot say that it takes always two people to divorce. It does not. It takes one person one person to blow up a marriage, not both. So myth number one, it takes two to divorce. Truth number one, it only takes one to blow up a marriage. It takes two people to make a marriage work. So get that one clear in your mind. Along with that, I'll read a quote to you from President Dallin H. Oaks. In a talk he gave, then Elder Oaks, in 2007, talked about divorce. And in fact, the title of the talk is Divorce, if you want to refer to that in conference in 2007. I'll read this quote to you, and I hope this helps to establish the truth of what I'm talking about. He said, quote, "There are many good church members who have been divorced. I speak first to them. We know that many of you are innocent victims, members whose former spouses persistently betrayed sacred covenants or abandoned or refused to perform marriage responsibilities for an extended period. Members who have experienced such abuse have first-hand knowledge of circumstances worse than divorce," unquote. Now remember, he's using the term victim. These are victims of divorce. You cannot blame a victim. If you do, that's not good. So we don't blame victims for things that happen to them. Some people are victims of divorce. So again, the truth is, it only takes one to blow up a marriage, not both. Moving to some other myths that are common that I've seen. These ones maybe not quite as painful, but nonetheless, they get in the way, and I want to be sure that everybody understands these. Some of these are a little closely related. Number one, well, now we're in myth number two. Divorce means that my ex-spouse and I have to hate each other and that we can't be friends. I don't get this one. It's just not true that we have to hate each other, but so many people behave that way towards their spouse, their ex-spouse, sorry. A constant plethora of different things. They feel like they have to mistreat them. Now that we are divorced, we have to be cruel, we have to say mean things, we have to belittle and put them down. And it's not true. It is not true. Although I recognize it is rare for divorced couples to get along that well that they can be friends, it is critical, especially when you have kids, and maybe even specifically when you have kids, that you learn how to get along. I do recognize that you can only control yourself, but control yourself. It's a myth to assume that you have to mistreat your former spouse. Related to that one is the third myth: I won't have to deal with my ex-spouse after the divorce is over. Sometimes we think, oh, I just can't wait. I hear this from people sometimes when they're going through a lot of struggles and they've been fighting in the marriage for so long and they're finally getting out. And then they say, it's going to be so nice to be out of this and my problems will be over. No, you still have to work with your ex-spouse if your marriage had children involved in it. You have to co-parent, and that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes down to this one. You still have to deal with the ex-spouse. If there are no kids, then of course that's not the case. But with children involved, it is the case that you have to deal with that ex-spouse. The fourth myth: my problems altogether will end after a divorce, and I'll just launch into total bliss and happiness. No, your problems kind of morph. The ones that maybe you had going on in the marriage are either diminished greatly or they do go away because of the divorce, but new ones come up. New ones related to the divorce that changes the circumstances. You're going to have to deal with some new things and learn how to cope with those. The final one is, if the divorce is the primary fault of my spouse, then I don't need to change anything after the divorce is over. False. All of us have weaknesses and flaws, things that contributed to difficulties in the marriage, even if they did not contribute to the divorce. We all have things to work on. Don't think that you can just point the finger at the former spouse who betrayed covenants or anything else and think, well, they're the ones who did it. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to improve. No, we all have room for improvement. Don't get sucked up in that myth either. I'm sure there are more myths than these, but these are the most common ones that I run into in my everyday work with people as they go through divorce. Next, we're going to be talking about some situations that come up in trying to cope with divorce in an LDS culture. We'll get to that one next, and I hope that this has been helpful for you in today's class, in this first of a class series in Life After Divorce. Thanks a lot. I'm Steve Eastman. We'll talk to you soon.